Yeah, Jeff, just kind of curious about obviously the big topic that's kind of going on with Aaron Judge of the Yankees, and obviously Shohei Ohtani is a big name for the Angels. But the MVP race, is it still a race between guys like Aaron Judge and Ohtani at this point in the season?
Yeah, I don't think it really is anymore. I think that Aaron Judge is going to win. I think that all Angels fans out there should just prepare themselves for that. That he is going to win. I think that Otani is going to get some votes, and I
Hmm.
certainly think that you can make an absolutely reasonable case that Otani should be the MVP over Judge. But it's totally reasonable to also to pick Aaron Judge. So, and I think just kind of as I hear the other writers and analysts and people that I respect a lot talk about the MVP, a lot of them are still picking Aaron Judge. So I think that probably means he's going to win. If somebody wants to pick Otani, I think it's still not too hard to make the case that he is basically two players.
Yep.
He's a pitcher and he's a hitter, and he's not just average at either of those. He's, in the top five in the league in both, which is something that nobody has done ever, really. Even including Babe Ruth at the time that he was doing it. So, for all the talk about Aaron Judge and he's doing this historic stuff, and he's going to win the Triple Crown or might win the Triple Crown, set the American League home run record, having one of the greatest offensive seasons ever. All that's true. You certainly can't argue with any of that. But Otani is also doing something that basically nobody's ever done. And he's doing something that is probably harder to do
Hmm.
than what anybody else has ever done. And, the comparison that I like to say is, let's say you had two golfers and they both shot a 59, but one of them did it only using a 5 iron. So
Mm.
that you would have to say is like a pretty incredible, unmatchable feat. But at the end of the day, they both have the same score. So, I think that's what we're looking at with Judge and Otani. Both of them are having just historic, off the charts seasons that absolutely are deserving of MVP. So it's just a matter of which one you choose to reward. So, it seems to me that people are leaning towards Judge, but I certainly don't think that you could go wrong by picking Otani.
So a few questions there. We'll get into Aaron Judge and his milestone in a minute, but first question, just to follow up, for those who don't know, maybe even including myself, who is it who votes for the MVP? I know in college football, there's different committees for different awards, and the writers vote for the AP Top 25 and all that stuff. But for baseball and the MVP, who votes on that?
Yeah, so there are the Baseball Writers Association of America picks
Okay.
has four awards that they give out. It's the MVP, the Cy Young, the Rookie of the Year, and the Manager of the Year. And we pick two writers from each city to vote for each award. So there's 15 cities in each league, 15 teams in each league. So there's 30 writers that vote for each. So there's going to be 30 MVP voters. And it just so happens that I'm the chairman of the LA chapter of the BBWAA. So I picked
Hmm.
who voted for
Okay.
everything. I did this back in the summer. And I intentionally did not pick myself as an MVP voter because, as I'm sure everybody here knows, I just wrote a book on Shohei Ohtani. And
Yeah.
you can still buy it on Amazon anytime you want, which you should do that if you haven't bought it yet. But I certainly, it was just a situation that I didn't want to get involved in, having a say in whether he won the MVP or not, because I just wrote a book on the guy. So I kind of left it to other people to decide. But there are 30 people around the country, two who cover each of the 15 teams in the American League, who will vote. And I imagine that Otani and Judge are going to get all 30 first place votes. And everybody who doesn't vote for Judge is going to vote Otani second. And anybody who votes for Otani is going to vote Judge second. So, even though you vote for 10 on your ballot, you go 1 to 10, and it's weighted with the points and everything like that. That's actually going to come much more into play in the National League, where there's more than just two candidates. And so it might be, some guy gets a fifth place vote instead of a third place vote. That could make a difference. In the American League, it's just going to be straight up first place votes for Judge versus Otani. And, like I said, I think Judge is going to win, but Otani should get some votes.
Gotcha. And some good insight there. I think I was aware that you were the president of that chapter, or you were kind of leading the way for that chapter. But a good insight there on your decision not to include yourself as one of the voters there. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And as you mentioned, obviously Christmas season is right around the corner, folks. I know people are putting out early deals and everything. If you're looking for a good stocking stuffer, no better idea for you guys than to gift Jeff Fletcher's new book on Otani. He does have that link and stuff available on his Twitter. So make sure you're following Jeff and getting not only the latest on the Angels, but more information about how you can go ahead and get that new book. And sticking with Aaron Judge here for a little bit, just what are your thoughts on maybe what some of people are saying about it, what was it, tying the real record? I know Barry Bonds and some other names have been mentioned
Yeah,
in
the uh, the
conversation.
the major league home run record for a single season is 73. Barry Bonds had 73 home runs in 2001.
Okay.
But as everybody knows, Barry Bonds was very strongly connected to steroids. I think everybody assumes he did use steroids. The other guys who also hit more than 61 home runs, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, they also use steroids. So a lot of people believe that the quote unquote clean record was still the 61 homers that Roger Maris hit in 1961. So last night, Aaron Judge hit his 61st homer. So there was quite a bit of a celebration in the baseball world that he's tied the legitimate record, so to speak. Um,
Hmm.
I think and there's a lot of people that say baseball should throw out the Barry Bonds record and you know invalidate it or something like that. And I think that's all kind of silly because the fact of the matter is Barry Bonds did hit 73 home runs, and he did it in front of lots of people, so you can't just say that it didn't happen.
Right.
So you can. I think also what we saw last night, just looking at Twitter, there's all kinds of people celebrating Aaron Judge, and there's all kinds of people saying, "Well, that's great, but the record is 73." So I think it doesn't matter what Major League Baseball says, is the record. I think everybody's going to believe what they want to believe, and there are going to be people, that still believe 73 is the record, and what Aaron Judge has done is great, but it's not the record. And there's going to be people that believe that the 61 is the record, and what Barry Bonds didn't count. So, whatever Major League Baseball claims as a quote unquote official is not going to change the way I think most of the people view it. So, I don't think that baseball really needs to start pulling the thread of like erasing things that we don't like because of steroids, because then you're
Right.
going to have to start like, okay, well then who won the 2001 MVP? Did Barry Bonds not win that either? And like all these other things that happened with all kinds of other guys that Mike Piazza is another guy that certainly was very heavily connected to steroids, and he's got the record for most homers by a catcher. So does he not have that record anymore? There's just so many things. It's just a huge Pandora's box to open. And personally, I think baseball is better just staying out of it and letting people make their own decisions, which I think people are going to do anyway.
Right. Yeah. You pull one little string on the thread there, and it'll all just start on. Just everything comes apart, and things could get really messy really quickly. So yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Just leave it for what it is. If anything, I guess it makes for, I don't know, good conversation, but makes for conversation in the baseball world. So yeah,
All
thank you for your.
conversation is good conversation when we're in the media, right? So
Oh yeah. Hey, we wouldn't be having this conversation now if things were
yeah,
set in stone and not up for debate. And I think that's one of the beauties of sport is it leaves things up for debate. So and I found it interesting. I forgot what the situation was, but I think I was scrolling through some wire photos, and I think I saw Barry Bonds was like at a Giants game. I kind of thought maybe he was kind of away from baseball, but I guess I'm wrong. Is he still kind of at least highlighted or spotlighted when he makes appearances at baseball games, or is he still accepted maybe by the MLB community? I know obviously again he was there at the Giants, but the Giants game. But what is the perception on Barry Bonds? We won't get too distracted on the main topic here, but just your thoughts on
yeah. I
where
mean,
Barry Bonds stands.
Barry Bonds is not certainly the poster boy for Major League Baseball. Like Rob
Hmm.
Manfred is probably not going to be like taking a picture with him, but
Right.
he's not prohibited from doing anything. He was the Marlins hitting coach a few years ago. He
That's
got
right.
a job in Major League Baseball, and the Giants still have him back for events.
Hmm.
I believe he was just on TV the other day on the broadcast, ESPN broadcast the other night doing like a secondary commentary.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and whereas, Pete Rose is banned from baseball. So he is
Right.
not allowed to have a job in baseball. He is not allowed to get in the Hall of Fame, all these kind of things. So baseball has the power to banish, so to speak, people that it feels broke its rules, and it has not done that with Barry Bonds. So I think, take that for what it's worth. He's still around, and he's a person in good standing for what it's worth, according to Major League Baseball.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I think, yeah, that's a good point. If the MLB wanted to flex its muscle and make a ruling, they probably would have done that already. So good point with the reference to Pete Rose there. In the build up to this Twitter Spaces, we did reach out and allow for several opportunities for people to send in their questions. We did compile some of the best ones here, and we'll get started with those if you're okay to get started, Jeff.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I'll read the first one off here from Maddie Ball 71, who writes in and says, with ownership in limbo this offseason, with ownership in limbo this offseason with pending new ownership, how does this affect offseason moves, the Shohei extension, and why should Angel fans buy tickets in 2023? So a lot of questions there, but we'll just get started with the first one. How does it affect offseason moves?
I think first of all, the Otani situation, nothing is probably going to happen until there's new ownership. I don't think that
Mhm.
something that important they want to do before they get it settled. And my understanding is that there's still some optimism that they can get this all taken care of in the next several months this winter. So that is certainly a positive thing for Angels fans that there's a chance that this could happen and not get delayed. As for other stuff that the Angels might do, I think that probably most of it would be business as usual. Um, I don't really know that they were going to be involved in like a big, $200 million deal for like a Xander Bogaerts or something like that. So that's the other another kind of thing that they might have held off on. But the kind of next level deals that I think they might have been making, they can probably still make regardless of where they are in the process of selling the team.
Gotcha. And then why should uh um why should Angel fans buy tickets
Oh,
in 2023?
I mean, there's never any promises that a team is going to be good. So if you're entertained by baseball and you want to watch Mike Trout and most likely
Mhm.
see Shohei Ohtani, then you should buy tickets. I think that there's no team guarantees its fans that it's going to be good, but people still buy tickets. So I can't tell people how to spend their money, but I think that the Angels are trying, and it hasn't worked. But they're certainly not going to tank the way some other teams do, where they just say we're not even going to try to be good this year. So we'll just all have to see what if it happens.
And just kind of looking at some of the other questions, I don't think we have any others specifically on ownership. So I have a question about that. What has there since the last time we did a Twitter space, it was like within the day or two of the announcement of them exploring the opportunity to sell the Angels. Have we heard from the owner at all? Has he, what has, obviously maybe outside of just this situation, how open was he with making public statements or talking with the media prior to this? Has it shut down or been any different since he's announced the opportunity to potentially explore and sell the team?
He didn't really say anything to the media for quite a while before this, and he hasn't said anything
Hmm.
since. So we're still in pretty much the same radio silence. And I think
Gotcha.
that Arte Moreno he wants to get through this sale thing, and I'm sure once it's closer to being done, he'll have some things to say. But uh, between now and then, I don't really anticipate him coming out and saying much of anything.
Gotcha. And yeah, so yeah, I was just curious about that and seeing if they were moving any different or anything along those lines were changing. But based on what you're saying, it sounds like that's not the case. Before we get to the next question here, just want to make sure all of you guys are doing your part, going ahead and following Jeff Fletcher if you aren't already. Jeff is one of the best in the business, especially when it comes to everything you need to know about the Los Angeles Angels. Go ahead and check out his work at ocregister.com. And also make sure you explore his Twitter page and check out the latest on his new book and where you can find that. If I'm not mistaken, that was available in the team store, right, at Angel Stadium?
Yeah, I believe they sold all of them though, so I don't know if they've ordered more.
Mm.
So still
Mm-hmm.
the safest way to do it is to just order it on Amazon, or if you want a signed copy, there's a Arvida bookshop in Tustin. I
Mm-hmm.
They ordered a whole bunch, and I went in there and signed them just yesterday. So you can order on their website, and they will send you a signed copy wherever you are, if you want to go that route. Or if you just want it without the signature, you can order from Amazon, and they will send it to you wherever you are.
Very nice. And if it's sold out in the team bookstore, that should tell you one thing. You guys should make sure you do whatever you can to get a book. Like I said, Christmas is right around the corner, so make sure you go ahead and do that. And obviously, I just want to give a shout out to you guys for being in the chat and listening. I see a few familiar faces. Taylor's in here. I also see Daniel, among others. John, Michelle. Thank you guys for being in here. We'll hop into the next question, Jeff. What are your thoughts on the future of the rotation and which pitchers this year do you think will stay or leave, and which minor league SP pitchers do you think will play a role in 2023? And that comes from Can You underscore Halos.
Um, I think their starting rotation is actually in a better position than it's been recently, which is not saying very much because they've been pretty bad recently. But Otani obviously is an ace, and assuming they don't trade him, they will have him back next year. And they also have Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, and Jose Suarez, who've all pitched
Mhm.
fairly well for most of their opportunities this season, and they're all very young and cheap. And if the Angels, if those guys just do again what they did this year, then that's a decent foundation. They probably still need some improvement around those guys, but it's a good core. And the most important thing about having a core like that is that they're young and cheap. So that gives you more money to spend to supplement it. If you if you need to add one or two starting pitchers, you can aim a little higher salary wise than if you need to add three or four. Because if you need to add three or four, you're all of a sudden going to be looking at guys that are much lesser pitchers because that's who you can afford. So I think they have a nice little core. As for the minor league starters that might come up,
Mm-hmm.
I think Kai Bush, who's in Double A this year, is a guy that really had a nice season. Chase Silseth, who we did see in the big leagues a little bit this season, has shown some promise. I think they feel like he might be a better reliever. Sam Bachman is another guy who was in Double A this year and could be a help, but I wouldn't really count on any of those guys for 23. I would say if some of those guys come up and do something at some point in 23, then they could be more long term answers. But they certainly do have some names that are promising down there.
And the next question here comes in from Tweets the Chad. Is there a minimum or maximum on what coaches and trainers are paid? Will the Angels replace their entire coaching staff? And then can you speak to the coaches and trainers from other teams, or do they have contracts?
First of all, the coaches do have contracts, a lot of them, but they're usually not very long term contracts. So a lot of their contracts would be ending at the end of the season. So the Angels could talk to, if they have their eyes on a hitting coach or third base coach or something like that who's with another team right now. There certainly could be some people available at the end of the season, and you can also ask a team to interview somebody. Usually, if you want to give them a promotion, it would be more likely that that would be allowed. Say, like the assistant hitting coach of the Marlins is somebody that the Angels like, and they would want to make him the major league hitting or the number one hitting coach. The Marlins would probably grant them permission to talk to him. As for how many coaches the Angels are going to replace, I don't know. I would be surprised if they don't replace a lot of them. The pitching certainly has been better this year, so I think the guys on the pitching side, Matt Wise and Dom Cheedy, the bullpen coach, are probably a little safer. the hitting has been a problem, which is not to say it's all the fault of Jeremy Reed, the hitting coach, but the way this industry works is if the results aren't there, coaches lose their jobs. So I would not be surprised if there's a change there.
That sounds good. Next question comes in from ZGun4. His question is, what will be C-Rod's role with the team next year? Starter, closer, or is he still recovering?
Yeah, that's Chris Rodriguez, and he really made kind of a nice impression in 2021 when he shot basically from pitching an A ball all the way to the big leagues. And he was a pretty successful reliever at the start of the year, and then he got a little bit of a cameo as a starter and showed some promise. But then he got hurt, and he was basically he had shoulder surgery, and he missed basically all of this season. So I think the Angels still have hopes for him just because he showed what he could do in his one shot in the big leagues in 21. But when you miss a whole season, and especially when it's a shoulder, I don't think they're going to assume anything with him. I think they're just going to get him healthy and get him into camp and see what he can do. And if he turns out to be healthy and pitches as well as he did before, then it's a bonus.
Sounds good. And the next question, plain and simple, comes in from at Hawaii Rider, who says Joe Adele versus Mickey Moniak. Let me know if I got that last name correct.
Mickey Moniak.
Moniak. Okay. Who do you have in that one? A very simple question.
Those two guys are pretty similar in the fact that they're both have been considered really good prospects, like in all of baseball, not just in their individual teams, and really haven't gotten it done in the big leagues yet. They're both outfielders. The difference, though, is that Adele has had much more opportunity. I think he's had about 500 plate appearances already in the big leagues, and Mickey Moniak is at about 150, I want to say. So there's still a lot more room to see what Moniak can do. Moniak, although, is a year older than Joe Adele, so in that sense, he sort of has less time. Personally, I think that probably Adele is a little more safe of a bet. He seems to just have some more raw tools and certainly like some more power. And he's already shown a lot of improvement defensively this year. So I think there's still, and plus him being a year younger than Moniak, I think there's still certainly hope for him to turn it around. But, the fact that he has had those 500 plate appearances and is still trying to figure things out offensively. And, I think this year he's got like 10 walks and 96 strikeouts or something like that, which is a really bad ratio. And that's not the kind of thing that necessarily really improves a whole lot from year to year. So I would say that's a kind of a red flag about him. But there's certainly two guys that the Angels are going to look at and would love to get good production out of one of them. And if I were to pick which is more likely, I would say Adele. But Moniak still hasn't really had enough of a chance to really show what he could do either. So could go either way.
And I do want to ask you about Rendon here in a little bit before we end the space, but we do have another question. First, before we get to Rendon, it comes in from Proud Ex-Democrat, who writes, in your opinion, what went wrong? We were pretty good for 6 weeks and then straight into the tank. Was it bad personnel decisions or bad luck? Also, do you agree with me that firing Madden was the single stupidest thing a baseball team has ever done? And again, that comes in from Proud Ex-Democrat.
Well, to take the last question, I don't think it was Joe Madden's fault that they were where they were at the time they fired him, but teams have done all kinds of things for all kinds of reasons. So I'll just leave that at that. As for what happened, I think it was kind of a perfect storm of things going wrong at the same time. They had Anthony Rendon got hurt and Taylor Ward got hurt. So those were two of their, probably four best hitters at the time. And they both got hurt at the same time. Ward was actually able to play a little bit, so it wasn't really considered to be, he wasn't even on the injured list. They just had him out there kind of playing at half his ability, I think. So, but those things both happened at the same time. And then you had basically the top three relief pitchers, Raisel Iglesias, Aaron Loop, Ryan Tepera, all pretty good relief pitchers who had pretty good career track records. All of them hit a slump at the same time, which is really hard to get over. You can get over, one reliever having a slump because then you can just shift it to the other guys while he's struggling. But if all three of them aren't pitching well, you're in big trouble. And that is basically what happened to them. And all of this happened at a time when they hit a really hard spot in their schedule where they were playing some really good teams and also where they were playing some teams that weren't as good but just started playing really well. Like the Boston Red Sox, for example, um, they're they haven't finished with a very good record, but at the time the Angels played them, they were in the middle of going like 18-6, something like that. The Blue Jays, who are going to make the playoffs as a wild card team, at the time the Angels played them, they were in the midst of a streak where they went, like 13-3 or something like that. And these are obviously they're beating more teams than just the Angels, so it's not like they only beat the Angels and that made them good. So it was just really unfortunate. And add to that, they played like the Mets, the Astros, the Dodgers, the Yankees, all during this stretch.
Mhm.
So it was just a kind of the perfect storm of things going wrong, and for the 14-game losing streak. And all that being said, they were still only 4 games under 500 when the 14-game losing streak ended. And even at the time that they had their big fight with the Mariners, which everybody remembers, which was the end of June, I think they were only about 3 games under 500 at that point. So really, what really kind of killed them was after all that. And they had the beginning of July, they went on a road trip where they went 1-8 to Houston, Miami, and Baltimore. And then I think they played the Dodgers and Astros right after that, and I think they went 0-5, and all of that, really just piled up on them, and that pretty much knocked him out.
Gotcha. And another question, just to kind of follow up on some of the ownership talk, and different coaches and what the coaching staff's going to look like. If I'm not mistaken, they haven't removed the interim manager tag from Phil Nevin. What is he going to be the guy for them next season, or are they going to be looking? I mean, you're not waiting for an owner to make a decision like that, right?
That's a great question. I think that before the ownership announcement came down, we probably all assumed that Phil Nevin was not going to be back. Not really anything
Mm-hmm.
against him, but just the team had played really poorly under him, and so that's hard to justify rewarding. But now that we don't know who the owner is going to be, you're not necessarily going to get your pick of other managers because another manager might not want to come in to an uncertain situation like that. And
Right.
also, generally the owner probably is much more interested in who the GM is than who the manager is. So I don't know that any new owner would really care that much who the manager is going to be. But still, it is just another factor that might lead the Angels to just go, you know what, let's just give Nevin a 1-year contract, and then we'll let, a year from now, we'll let the new owner and whoever else is around decide what they want to do. So right now, I would not be surprised either way. Either they do make a change and look for a new manager, or if they give Nevin, uh, let him stick around. So that's definitely one of the most interesting things that we're going to find out about soon. I would expect that we would know that for sure by like the day after the season, if not
Mm-hmm.
sooner. So it's could be something any day that we look for. I imagine the Angels would make an announcement that you know Phil Nevin has agreed to a 1-year deal to be the manager, or Angels will be looking for a manager when the season ends. So that could happen any day now.
All right, everyone, make sure you stay tuned for that. So again, I kind of teased it earlier, and I saw you wrote something about it on ocregister.com. Make sure you guys are going to ocregister.com to make sure you find all of Jeff's work and everything you need to know about the Angels. You wrote about Anthony Rendon and him coming back to kind of finish out the season. Can you just kind of update us on that situation?
Yeah, so he had wrist surgery in June, and at the time they said it was season-ending surgery. End of story. Um, but what it turns out is that actually the timeline for that was pretty much right at the end of the season. So they didn't want to say that he was going to come back, or because if he was, it was just going to be barely. So they basically just took the safe route and said season ending. So then the other thing that happened was shortly after he had that surgery, he was involved in this fight with the Mariners, and even though he was injured and not on the active roster, he came running out of the dugout slamming his cast around at people, and so Major League Baseball suspended him for 5 games. So that sort
Gotcha.
of added an extra incentive to for him to come back, because if he did not come back, then that 5-game suspension would have started next season. Um, Obviously, next season the games mean more than these games do now because they're going to be trying again. So getting him back on the field this year had kind of the two-pronged benefit of first of all allowing him to know that he was healthy going into the offseason and basically have a normal offseason. He had hip surgery during the 2021 season, and that really lingered into the winter, and he wasn't really healthy until like almost before spring training. So this really sped that up, and to know that he was good and he could play in games before the offseason started this year is obviously a much better place for him to be in. And then the secondary benefit is if he could get that suspension out of the way, then he doesn't have to worry about it next year. So he started working out in on the field in like mid-August or so. He just started doing some kind of light fielding stuff, and he increased that gradually all the way through. And then he faced some live pitching from a minor league pitcher the Angels had brought in, basically just to pitch to him on Tuesday and Wednesday. And after the workout Wednesday, he said, "I'm good to go." So the Angels obviously had to prove to Major League Baseball that he was legitimately healthy, and they weren't just activating him to get the suspension out of the way. Major League Baseball was satisfied that he was healthy, so they activated him. The 5-game suspension started, and that'll leave 3 games next week in Oakland. So he will play those last 3 games, and then the suspension will be done, and he will be able to have a offseason knowing that he came back and played.
Sounds good. I have 2 more questions for you that came in from readers, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The first one was something similar to what I was thinking about asking about. I know you Beatles had their top prospect make his MLB debut behind the plate in the Angels win yesterday. But this question comes in from our Lord 4018, who asked, "Do you see Ohape? Let me know if I
Ohapi.
mispronounced that.
Ohapi.
Ohapi, even better. Do you see Ohapi remaining on the major league club next year as a backup?"
I think that he will be in the majors most of next year. I don't know if he's going to be on the roster opening day. I mean, he's just played 1 game, and his 1 game looked pretty good. But we'll see what he does, in his remaining whatever 3 or 4 starts he gets before the season ends, and then we'll see what happens in spring training. We'll see if the Angels acquire anybody else, like a more veteran backup in the offseason. Also, we'll see how Matt Theis does. He's also a catcher. So there's all kinds of variables involved in this, but I think in the big picture, Ohapi is their catcher, their long-term catcher. If you ask me who's going to be their everyday catcher in 2024, I'd say it's going to be him. But as for 2023, I don't know how quickly he's going to make the adjustment from where he is now to where I expect him to be in 24.
And again, Ohapi is 22 years old and was acquired from the Phillies at the trade deadline last month and was promoted from Double-A to the majors. And he singled in a 4-1 win for the Angels last night. The next question comes in from @softballhuman, who says, "Do you think the team will move Trout to left field, less strenuous positions? He's getting older, etc."
Eventually he will at some point. He's signed until he's 39, I think, and he's not going to be playing center field when he's 39. But I still think he's got some years left in center field. I don't really think that they would move him uh, for health reasons, because I just don't
Mm.
buy that it's really that different on the wear and tear on your body playing center field or playing left field. You're still running around, and if you're running, I'm just picking a number out of the air, 300 yards in a game in center field and 240 yards in a game in left field, I just don't see how that makes that huge of a difference. So I think he's going to play center field as long as he can play center field capably uh, on defense, performance-wise. And they also have to have somebody else better than him to replace him. Now, Brandon Marsh was that guy before they
Mm-hmm.
traded him. So now they don't really have that guy. So they would have to acquire somebody else, or maybe a guy like Jordan Adams, who's a really good outfielder who's in the minors right now. Maybe he makes some progress and gets up to the big leagues, and maybe he becomes that guy. But until there's somebody else who's a better center fielder than him, he's going to be the center fielder.
That sounds good, Jeff. Anything else? Any final thoughts as we kind of put a bow here on the Angels season? I think this will probably be the last time I talk to you, at least until after the season's over. Just your quick thoughts or any final thoughts on the Angels season as we wrap up the Twitter Spaces for today.
I would just say there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to happen this winter, so people should not just stop reading when the season ends. There's obviously the ownership situation. There's the manager situation. There's going to be coaching staff changes. They obviously have roster changes to make to continue to improve. And, there's going to be the continuing adaptation of the new rules and how does that affect things. For example, stolen bases are going to be much more big deal next year than they are now because of some different rule changes. So that might change the way, teams build their rosters. So that's certainly going to be something to watch over the winter. And so people should definitely keep an eye on the coverage and also buy the book, Showtime, the inside story of Shohei Ohtani and the greatest baseball season ever played. So if you don't have it, just pick up a copy.
No doubt about it. Make sure you guys listen to Jeff Fletcher, not only when it comes to Angels and Angels coverage, and all forms of how he's going about presenting you guys with the facts and news about the team, but go check out his book, as he mentioned, on Otani. Go ahead and give Jeff a follow and make sure you get all the details you need, whether you look for a signed copy, a regular copy on Amazon. They used to be available in the team store, but they sold out. So make sure you find a way to get yourself a copy. Like I said, get your Christmas shopping done early, at least in some aspect, and make sure you get a book or two or three. But with that being said, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate having you on. This was the second time we've done a Twitter space. I don't think it will be the last time. Like I said, it'll be a busy off season. So make sure you guys are going ahead, as I mentioned, checking out Jeff's coverage at ocregister.com. We also got a new Ducks writer if you like sports in the city of Anaheim. Lisa Dillman, we'll try and get her on a space sometime soon, so she can introduce herself and talk about the Ducks and their upcoming season. But as I mentioned, Jeff, this has been fun, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
All right. Thanks, James.
And again, thank you for everyone in the space and for hanging out and being here from start to finish. I know quite a few of you were in here from the very beginning. Andrew, Taylor, John, Michelle, Daniel was in here. Thank you guys so much, and you guys have a good one and enjoy the rest of the season. Thank you.